Sorry for not posting yesterday. I was quite stressed out, but I'm not going to go into the details because that would be pretty personal. So today, I'll be covering the New York subway deaths. And, it's another creepypasta. And, yeah. I don't know what else to fucking say, sorry. Anyway, without further ado, let us begin. One of my friends is a paramedic in New York. Don't ask me why. We weren't asking why, you dick. But it was always his dream to become one. And New York, being the big and wild city that it is, and also the really expensive one, if you get my drift, he has, of course, seen some crazy shit. He doesn't talk about his experience much since they are always very professional and often disturbing, but I know that he has encountered his fair share of gruesome stabbings and gunshots. For example, he told us how one time some kids were playing with a shotgun and one of them got his jaw blown off. The boy was still alive as his friend rushed him to the ER and he eventually lived, but he is horribly disfigured now and eats through a tube. Jesus fucking Christ, that's how we're starting for the rest of his life. There were other stranger things. He told us once how he responded to a call where an elderly woman managed to decapitate herself at home alone. They found her body sitting in a chair in front of the TV, which was still on, and her head was laying beside her in the middle of the floor beside a puddle of blood. Her door was locked and all of her windows were closed. Well, that I know that the neighbors heard a large thud in her apartment and called police when she didn't answer, but no one else figured out exactly how it happened. Yep, by far the strangest, creepiest story that he has ever told us is one about the mysterious subway deaths that happened several years ago. A few of my other friends and I were hanging out at his apartment one time, drinking and listening to music. When the topic of the ghosts came up, we started by talking playfully about ghost experiences we had as a child. Are you sure about that? Because, what kind of, fuck it, I don't care. Just shadows in the corner of her eyes, feelings about being watched and stuff like that. I've seen stuff move by itself, by the way. No, that is not a joke. But then my friend spoke up, and he said in a very serious tone that he wanted to tell us a story that he swore to God actually happened that and freaked him out so much that it sometimes kept him awake, and when he rode the subway late at night, almost gave him panic attacks. We all became serious as he told us the following story. I will tell you now. So, my friend said a couple of years ago that the ambulance crews started getting calls about once every week about people being found dead in the subway. The deaths always happened between a few particular stations. He said the names, but I couldn't really call it because the New York subway system is fucking huge. And it always happens late at night when the cars were almost deserted. In fact, the victims were always found alone on the subway cars, sitting or lying on the benches, and there were never any witnesses. Other details about all the victims were male and died of heart attacks, sometimes even when they were unusually young. After the calls had been coming in steady for a couple of months, the story started to get some minor attention. The police checked footage from the cameras in the stations, but never saw anyone get on or off the trains. Frankly, that made them... Oh my god, sorry. That made them think that a particular person was causing the heart attacks with drugs or a stun gun or by some other means. There was no explanation. It seemed like there was some unlucky guy who was riding a subway car. Everyone else would happen to get off. And then, sometime when he was alone on the car, between the stations, he would simply have a massive heart attack and die. A newspaper even ran a small insert about the case on the back reaches of the police blotter. Perhaps you even saw it, asking for information, yet nothing came of it. But eventually, my friend was lucky or unlucky enough to get a clue about what might have been going on. He was on duty one night when his crew responded to a call about one of the heart attacks, but the person manages to survive. They pick him up from the platform at the train station when he was lying on the ground with a jacket from a Good Samaritan who called 911 over his head. The person who placed the call was still there and said that when he entered the car, he saw that the man was sitting slumped over one of the benches and gasping for breath. Then he called 911. When the man indicated that he needed help, my friend assisted him by strapping the guy, who was about in his 40s, onto the stretcher. And when it was with him in the back of the ambulance, and they went to the emergency room, the man was well enough to talk, and my friend listened to him. He did whatever medical things one does in such situation. Soon he realized that something abnormal was going on in the subway, sometimes that still disturbs him to this day. The man said that he was on a way home from an exhausting shift at work late at night as usual. There were just a few people on the car where he boarded, and he was very tired, started nodding off as he sat on the car. He said he remembered at one point between the naps that the car became deserted, except for him. He suddenly woke up to find himself paralyzed. He could see in front of him what was going on, but he couldn't move anything. Not even blink. He tried to yell, moan, or do something, but the only results with inwards was silence. He said that he experienced sleep paralysis before, usually at home, but it was what happened next that almost killed him. He was sitting there paralyzed, train rolling between stations. He saw the little girl walking towards him. She was neither happy nor sad. He said just an average little girl like you would see walking down the street, but she was transparent, as if he was watching a reflection in a window. He began to feel extremely anxious as she came nearer but still couldn't move. She did not look at his eyes, but he said that she looked at him as if she knew him. She acted like it as well. She climbed up on his lap and curled herself into a ball as if to sleep, just the way I often see little girls do with their parents when they're tired. And at that moment, he said his heart attack started. The little girl was cold and motionless as she sat on his lap. He said his whole body... He said that the cold from her crept all over his whole body until it began to feel like someone was squeezing the middle of his chest and started to lose his breath. But there was nothing he could do. The little girl just sat there on his lap, filling him up with cold. Suddenly, a subway arrived at the next station, and the little girl dissolved from his lap. Just before he heard the door open, that's when a Good Samaritan who made the call came up to him and he said, "My friend related that the man survived the incident and recovered fully. The calls about the heart attacks continued to come on for another month or so, then mysteriously stopped, just as quickly as they had started. No confidential explanation was ever found that fully explained the incident. My friend has offered a couple of theories of his own to what have happened. First, he said the sleep paralysis is fairly common, often accompanied by vivid dreams and hallucinations, which could explain what the man saw, yet it still doesn't explain the wave of heart attacks all occurring to males along the subway station, all between roughly the same stations. Unfortunately, for the sake of finding the truth, the lucky man was, at least to my friend's knowledge, the only one to survive. Consequently, there was no other stories to contribute his. The other theory is that it really was a ghost of a little girl who caused the heart attacks on the subway, like any big city. New York has a lot of domestic crimes and many broken families. My friend speculated that she was a little girl who was perhaps killed by one of her parents, or maybe died when somehow wandered onto the subway tunnels after running away from home and spent the time after her death searching for her father. Of course, no one truly knows. After my friend finished speaking, we all sat there in silence, staring at the ground. Some upbeat song played on the background from the stereo, but the mood was dead by now, and stayed that way until my friends and I went home. When we did, I don't think a single one of us took the subway that evening. Yeah, it's kind of creepy, the first bit. Especially, it's really fucking disturbing how they mentioned that a kid got his jaw blown off by a shotgun and lived, and then an old lady decapitating herself in her own home. And yeah, it's kind of fucking disturbing, but some of this stuff actually does happen. Thank you to C.S.C. Donahue for making this creepypasta. And again, if you want more of these creepy stories and that, let me know in the comment section. And make sure you give a like and subscribe, because it helps me, alright? Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow or something like that with another video. Anyway, have fun, be safe, and be careful if you take a train in New York. Goodbye.